It has been quite a long time without sewing and I just had to get my hands on some fabric. I have been sewing quite feminine clothing for the past year, even though I don't necessarily wear this type of clothing anymore. That's why this time I reached for something more stereotypically masculine. Can you guess what it's gonna be? Oh, wait, you've seen the thumbnail, of course you know what it's gonna be. It's pirate shirt time! Who would have known I'm actually gonna make the clothing from the designing my new wardrobe video? I thought just simply making an 18th century men's shirt would be rather boring though. I think we've all seen Bernadette Banner's pirate shirt video and let me tell you, the pattern from that video doesn't exactly have a great name, especially because it's been advertised as a beginner sewing project. In fact, so many people have problems with following it, I have decided to test it myself. Because this is a pattern test, I decided not to alter the pattern in any way, no matter how bad the fit may be. And let me tell you, I'm gonna be regretting this decision quite a few times throughout the process. Before I go into it, I just want to say that any criticism of the pattern I have isn't about Bernadette's preferred sewing methods. Sewing is a hobby and everyone enjoys doing it a bit differently, and that is perfectly okay. My criticism here is based mostly on how the shirt was recommended to beginner sewists and how it failed to accommodate their skills. I also know Bernadette says her videos are not tutorials, but if you give a pattern in the video and encourage people to use it, I feel like there is a bit more pressure to actually explain what you're doing in more detail and show the whole process. But all that being said, let's go to the sewing of the shirt. I've cut out all the pieces following the pattern's measurements and added a 1 cm seam allowance. At first I wanted to follow Bernadette's process as closely as I can and do the whole thread pulling thing, but I gave up on that pretty quickly. Bernadette suggests that this method is easier on the eyes, but it's not, at least not for me. In fact, I had to get new glasses since making this shirt. Okay, maybe I already needed new glasses, but still. Anyways, I just simply cut the fabric. You can actually feel out if you are cutting straight along the threads, and looking if you cut straight is so much easier than spending hours thread pulling and using all your brain power to pick on exactly the same thread every time, and then squinting your eyes to see if you're actually cutting perfectly straight. Just like Bernadette, I'm gonna begin with something simple in fear of sleeves, and that will be getting the cuffs and collar ready for later. I decided to sew all long seams by machine as I have school to attend to while I'm sewing all of this. Well, let's face the hopefully hardest part of this project, the gussets. I must say this is probably the part most people start to get frustrated with, including me. You don't really get the measurements of the gussets. The numbers on the pattern are a mere suggestion, and the only thing you can do about it is just straight up a guessing game. For a beginner, it can definitely be very discouraging if you don't know what to do. Luckily enough, I'm around the same build as Bernadette, so I just went on and used about the same size of gussets as her, which was, I think, about 15 centimeters or so. I really don't understand the way Bernadette fell the seams of those sleeves. I mean, I get that it's fell to one side for strength, but it's so unnecessarily complicated. The moment I saw how messy switching from one side to both for the opening is, I knew I'm not gonna do this the same way. I decided to still do the finishing by hand as I deemed fit for a Bernadette Banner style project, but I felt each seam allowance individually. This makes it so much easier and it definitely a method more fit for a beginner. Look, I know that Bernadette's technique makes the garment much more durable, but I'm not planning to go to war in this shirt. It will be fine. Before I do any gathering on the sleeve, I should probably sew on the reinforcements. Just like Bernadette, I decided to reinforce the slits with the fabric patches on both the inside and the outside of the sleeve. In hindsight, I don't think it's actually worth the effort. Something you don't realize is that most people tend to cut the struggles out of videos. I'm assuming that this might have happened here because sewing those tiny patches on is so hard. They are fiddly, hard to pin down, hard to line with each other, and so much more. Instead, you can just do a quick reinforcement stitch either by machine or by hand. It's gonna save you so much time. I run a gathering thread for the bottom and the top of the sleeve, excluding the gusset. Hopefully all this guessing will leave us with some nice puffy sleeves later on. I gathered the bottom part of the sleeve to fit to the cuff. It was a bit fiddly and the folds are definitely not as neat as Bernadette's, but it will do. I sewed the edge that will be visible from the outside using a sewing machine. This way the edge will be as crisp as possible. The other edge I sewed by hand using a felling stitch. I prefer to sew the insides of cuffs, waistbands and things like that by hand because it gives me more control than a sewing machine. And sewing techniques such as sewing in the ditch terrify me. Now that the sleeves are pretty much done, we need something to attach them to. And here we face the arm side again, as I had to leave space for it when sewing the side seam. Once again, there are pretty much no instructions for that. I did roughly what Bernadette showed, which is basically measuring the distance from the tip of your shoulder to the point you want the arm side to end at. I also left a few centimeters unsewn at the bottom of the shirt for more freedom of movement. Before sitting in the sleeve, I had to gather up the top part to achieve a nice poof. My shirt probably has a 1:2 ratio of gathers to gusset. I don't actually think this is a rule, but it worked with my measurements and it seemed to me that the ratios on Bernadette's shirt and the shirt that she showed in the video are quite similar. I must say setting in the sleeve was much easier on this shirt as you don't have to worry about any curves. To be honest, I think the sleeve setting is one of a few things that may make this project attractive to beginners. The only other thing that I can think of is easy pattern drafting. Let's get back to the irritating seam finishes. I had to somehow get around the sleeve edge. I cut those sleeves so the top edge is the salvage. This means it doesn't actually need finishing. I didn't want to fell the sleeve seam allowance because it would be pretty tricky with all the gathers there. So after much procrastination, I decided to fell the side seams the same way as the sleeves up to the armhole and then zigzag stitch the rest of the seam allowance by machine. This was probably the most frustrating thing, especially because the felling of the seam allowance isn't actually shown in Bernadette Banner's video. It got covered up with a sponsorship. Was it because she wasn't sure what to do herself? Did something go wrong? Was this just random? I don't know, but it was surely annoying. But talking about sponsorships, no, I do not have a sponsor, unless... Well, let me tell you that you can be a sponsor. And no, I am not asking you for money. Well, I guess I do have a coffee, but this is not about this. You can be a sponsor by subscribing. Well, let me tell you, I'm not gonna get a single penny for doing all the YouTube stuff here unless I get to 1,000 subscribers, and I can't really do that unless you subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, and you can always unsubscribe at any given moment if you end up not liking me that much. But also I want to take this moment to thank all the people that are already subscribed, because recently we hit 500 subscribers, and this actually means that I will finally be able to communicate with you guys here on YouTube through the community tab, because it opens at this achievement, I guess. So thank you to all the people that have already subscribed, and if you are not subscribed and want to, I guess, support me in some sort of way, then please do subscribe. But all of this aside, let's go back to the sewing. We have more unnecessarily time-consuming things to do, and those are the side seam reinforcements. They are the same as on the sleeves. I did learn from my mistakes though, and made the patches just a tad bit bigger, so it's easier to actually fold the unfinished edges under. I also found some tiny pins that were much easier to get around while sewing. But let's be a little bit more positive for a second. There is something that turned out to be much easier than I anticipated, and that is finishing the front opening. I just fell down the edges in my usual manner. It's actually quite easy to work around the corner if you do this by hand. Just to be safe, I did secure the end of the cut with a few extra stitches. I didn't really worry about how messy those stitches were because they were covered up by yet another reinforcement. I do complain about sewing the patches on a lot, but they're actually a pretty nice visual touch to the shirt. Still, if you are a beginner wanting to make this shirt, I would probably switch out the patches for a simpler reinforcement method. I think you can get frustrated and demotivated pretty fast while sewing them on. Well, I was getting a bit more optimistic as the end of this project was getting near, but all the hope got crushed pretty fast. It was time to gather up the neckline. My stitches came undone so many times. At some point I just stopped recording every try, but I want you to know that there was a struggle there. Now this is more my fault and the fault of the fabric, so this complaint is just so I can get this out there. It's not actually about the pattern. There is a confusing thing about the neckline though. Bernadette's pattern doesn't include any neck gussets, so the part where the cut ends get pretty awkward. It's also not specified how far from this point the gather should end. Then came time to sew on the collar. Surprisingly, I managed to somehow sew around the corners without the need to redo that seam. I was worried about the corners batching up and not being able to smooth them up enough for the machine. Off camera, I did try the shirt on once half of the collar was sewn on, and let me tell you, it was dreadful. At this point in the project, I regretted almost everything. The sleeves were too long, the gathers looked out of place, and the shoulders just straight up felt wrong. Usually while sewing you will correct anything that you don't like about the garment, but in this case it would defeat the whole purpose of trying out the pattern. I decided to struggle through this and sew the other side of the collar by hand. Now, as most of the construction is done, let's add some type of closure. I decided to add 2 buttons to each cuff. Some people also add buttons to the collar, but I can already tell this collar is not going to be functional, so I didn't bother with that. I sewed the buttonholes by hand with what is called a buttonhole stitch. This stitch creates little knots on the inside of the buttonhole and in this way makes it more durable. The last thing I have to do is finishing the bottom edge of this shirt. I only roughly basted it in place. I'm trying to tell myself that I did that because the edge is already a salvage, but really it's because I didn't want to put any more time and effort into this project. But let's actually take a look at how this shirt turned out. Wait. Not yet. Cut it out with all the aesthetic bullcrap. We need a more realistic look on the shirt first. Well, now that the shirt is already done, I think I owe you an explanation of what is wrong about it. You've already seen my struggles while sewing this, now here you go, a finished result. And I will explain what is so bad about this pattern. I mean, it's not a terrible pattern. You wanted to make a shirt, you've got a shirt. The shirt has a lot of problems though, and I will explain what they are. The first thing I have noticed is the length of the sleeves. So, you can see, those are the cuffs. If I just put my hands like this, you cannot see the cuffs. And this speaks to me that it was not meant to be that way. You don't really drape a shirt and not see the cuffs. It kind of defeats the whole purpose of having those white cuffs. And I think I know what happened. So when you measure your sleeve length for the pattern, you measure it from the tip of your shoulder to the end of the sleeve and 2 inches for the poof. So this didn't really count in that the shirt doesn't have an arm side that begins at the point. It's off shoulder. So basically another 2 inches or more were added into the sleeve. To fix that, you have to measure your sleeve from this point on your shoulder and then add 2 inches, maybe make a mock-up. If I was to alter this shirt, I would alter the sleeves and I would just shorten them. And that would already be so much better. Those are the sleeves. But there is also a lot of things happening with the shirt overall. First of all, it's huge. It's unnecessarily huge. You need to make the shirt wider for all those gathers to be there, but this is a meter. This is 2 times from one point of my shoulder to another. It doesn't need that much. This is a waste of fabric in my opinion, and it doesn't look flattering at all. I would take maybe 20 centimeters. I saw that some patterns took like 10 centimeters from this. I personally probably would take like 20, but I think this is also a preference. It doesn't look flattering as it is on me because of how big it is. If you tuck it into something or like put a palette on it, like I will do in the final reveal footage, it helps a lot, but it's still, you don't need all of this. And there is a lot of things happening with the shoulders. So let's focus on the gathers first. You see how this shouldn't lay like this. The gathers should be like even, I guess, or at least not end so drastically. I think I know what happened here. So some patterns have additional neck gussets here. Basically what those neck gussets do is they smooth out the curve of the neckline, because the neckline is basically just a straight cut. That doesn't sit right on shoulders because shoulders are not straight across. They go down. And you also have the curve of the neck. So if you just cut something across, it isn't like, it's two-dimensional. People are not two-dimensional. So you need to add this third thing to smooth it over, just to shape it. And if you add the neck gussets, I think the gathers would also smooth out, because you just wouldn't have any gathers here, because there would be the gusset here, and the gathers would just start lower, because now you can see that it kind of looks like someone just pinched this and it just went like this. Gathers should not like, it's not how you drape a shirt. This shouldn't be so, it's a weird place for this to happen. The same thing happens in the back. maybe a bit slighter, but you can also see that it does basically the same thing here. The color is not terrible, it's also not great, but I think the gussets would also help with the color. Maybe make the color a little bit looser than mine. I mean, mine is okay. Maybe it's just my preference to make it bigger. Basically, I think those are all the things that I am upset by with this pattern, because like it's not a terrible shirt. Like, don't get me wrong, I know I have criticized it a lot here, but I think it's just unfortunate because I might be completely wrong here, but I feel like this shirt is kind of the thing, like you made something, you wanted to publish it, but it didn't look quite so good, but you still wanted it out, so we didn't fix it. Now it looks like this. In my opinion, that's kind of what happened, what I think happened. I'm not Bernadette, I don't know. I just want to say, none of my complaints are about Bernadette here. I'm talking about the shirt. This is from an old video. I think Bernadette learned a lot from the time of making this pattern, but it was marketed, basically, the whole thing about this was like, it's gonna be an easy beginner project. At this point, I'm not a beginner. I'm like an intermediate, and I still had a lot of struggles. And I have chosen not to alter this pattern, specifically to show you what's wrong. There are no alterations here. If you want to be basically telling me that it's your fault because you sewed it wrong, I have specifically only followed the pattern without any alterations to show you this. Because if I made alteration, first of all, I would add the neck gussets. Second of all, I would have shortened the sleeves. The second I saw that they are too long, I would have shortened them. I didn't do any of those things specifically because I wanted to clearly show you what are the problems about this pattern. So when you make it, you know what alterations you probably really need to do. There are other patterns for pirate shirts on YouTube, and there are patterns that have neck gussets, and you can try those ones out. You can do this one, just remember basically this video and be ready for those things to alter them. At the beginning, I wanted to make 2 shirts for this video and compare them to each other. I didn't do that because I just simply realized with my schedule and school, I'm not gonna be able to make 2 things for one video. But if there is a video or a pattern for either a pirate shirt or honestly any like simple garment, if you want me to test a pattern for a chemise or something like this, just leave it in the comments. And I will possibly do this. I do have fabric for a second pirate shirt or a different project. So if there are enough people that want me to try a different pattern, I'm ready to do that. Just let me know. So thank you for watching this video. Once again, I know this was a rather pessimistic video, but please, I don't want any toxicity in the comments. I am not here to be mean to Bernadette. Any negative things that I have said is because of the problems of the pattern, specifically the pattern. Remember the pattern, Bernadette made the pattern, but I mean, I'm pretty sure she improved at pattern making since then. And this is about the pattern and how I felt while making it. I did not feel good while making it, also because I just couldn't alter it. Usually you would just alter the things that you don't like. I have prevented myself from doing so to help you. So please don't be mean. Please don't be mean to me or Bernadette or anyone in this community. Just peace, everyone. Thank you. That is all. Now you will see the aesthetic reveal of the shirt, because I think after this entire video we need something pretty to look at and bring some positivity back into this. So thank you for watching. Bye. Also, as you already made this far into the video, maybe you want to watch another one. This video is about me designing my new wardrobe that has also pirate looks in it that this shirt will be potentially used for. So maybe you'll be interested.